Coming out of escape, there is a few things that can happen. You can either get rat frames or priest frames, which they actually call incroy frames. Getting rat frames, what happens here is coming out of the last room of escape into the sanctuary here, you can get blocked by a rat in the doorway, and if you actually slash the rat while you transition through the doorway, you get rat frames. And what that looks like is Link is actually in a pushing animation as he emerges through the door, which actually speeds up the text about 70 frames on average. But to remember with that, you do lose the frames in the room before in escape by getting hit and slashing the rat as you go through the door. So it does save 70 frames here, but you do have to account for the lost frames that you get while slashing the rat through the door transition. Priest frames or incroy frames, what that is it actually speeds up the text, which also saves you about 70 frames on average. And in order to get the incroy frames, you have to transition the screen from escape while you're beeping. So when you have one heart left, you can get those incroy frames. But one thing to note, if you have both, it's just one or the other. It's just going to save you 70 frames in the long run. So once you get through the door here, you're going to have the priest text, which you want to mash with all the face buttons. And he is going to give you a choice at the end here. So one thing with that, I know I had talked about earlier about canceling the last text boxes with LNR. You actually cannot cancel a final text box with LNR if it ends in a choice. So here you want to, when you get to the end of mashing, I just mash A while I hold down, because you can swipe your sword, you can map, and you can use whatever's in your item or your boomerang. So I just mash A and then hold down to get ready to move. One thing you do want to note here is if you are going to hold down while you're mashing on the last text box, make sure you hold down before the last text box pops up. You definitely do not want to pick this second choice. There is a new stair movement that I do talk about a little bit in my basic movement and minor glitches tutorial that does go over some of the new stair tech, which you can actually cancel your movement coming off of the sanctuary stairs with a quick left or right cardinal movement input as you go down the rest of the stairs, which does speed up your movement a little bit. I don't do it in the video here, but I just wanted to make sure that I talk about it. But just make sure that you exit cleanly. Coming out of the sanctuary, you want to just hold down until you clear the first part of the stone gate and align yourself with an angle down right input right to the right side of the bushes. This will get you ready to transition to a right input a little bit better, plus it gets you closer to where you need to go anyway. Once you get past the stone wall that surrounds sanctuary, you want to go into an angle down right input, and you actually want to align Link's shadow with the second rock in the middle of the pathway. As you look to the right there, you see the top rock, and there's a rock a little bit below to the left of there. It gets you down a little bit further for preparation of the next screen, but you definitely do not want Link's shadow to be lower than that rock. If you line up Link's shadow and it goes below that rock, you can actually aggro the guard on the next screen because you're too low. So just make sure you line up the bottom of Link's shadow with either, like, I would say probably the middle of that rock below, and then just hold right and transition the screen. As you transition the screen to the right, you're probably going to run into the outline of the cemetery here just on the corner in front of you. If you do a little nudge against it, it's not a huge time loss. That's actually more preferred than a anti-pump, which is basically just moving Link down as he's moving right or down because he has slower movement. But it's okay just to do a little bit nudge there, but continue to hold right. You shouldn't aggro the guard just because you transition the screen a little higher than normal, but just continue to hold right until you transition to the next screen. Here you want to go into an angle upright input and just put Link just above the top of the tree line, or align yourself with it. I like to transition here because I can see exactly where I need to align myself with the tree. You can transition to an angle upright input on the prior screen before the transition, but it's not a big difference. I just like to do it on this screen because I have something I can visually see to align myself with. After you align with the top of the tree line there, as you pass it, just go into an angle down right input all the way until you get to the next screen. Continue to hold angle down right until you get to the part of the wall there that slopes downward. At that point, you just want to hold down until you get to the bottom of the bridge. Once you get to the bottom of the bridge, just go into an angle down right input and just hold that direction until you clear the bridge. Once you clear the bridge, just hold down until you get yourself to the middle of the grass pathway. You should be able to see where the opening is on the lower left side, but you want to line yourself up in the middle of that pathway. Once you feel that you're in the middle of the pathway, just go into an angled down left input and just hold that all the way through until you get to the corner of the mountain on the right side, and then just transition the screen downward. From here, just hold down until the mountain slopes to the right and go into an angle down right input to align yourself right in between the pathway of the last two big boulders or big rocks there. One thing to note, the Octoroks can get into your way. You can slash them. That will actually advance the prize packs for additional rupees. You can boom them if you want to, or rocks can get in your way, which I do show an RNG where you have to slow down for a rock. But just make sure you have good RNG reaction here. Continue down the pathway nice and cleanly. Don't nudge any of the rocks. If you do have a clear pathway, as soon as the last rock on the bottom right starts to slope downward to the right, just hold angle down right to get as far to the right of the screen transition as you can. Like I said before, I do show an additional RNG where you do have to stop and stall to wait for the rock to pass you. An Octorok can get in your way. Just do what you need to do to get past him, either sword him or boom him. And actually multiple Octoroks can get in your way. You just have to have quick RNG reaction. Here you just want to hold angle down right through the screen transition, all the way down through the right slope of the mountain, and then just go right into a right directional input to get to the next part. This screen actually has a few different movement techniques that you can do. Once you clear the straight part of the mountain there and it starts to slope up, you can actually just hold angle up right. And once you clear that slope, you can either hold up and air pump to the right to get to the screen transition, or you can just continue to hold angle up right from that first slope on your left until you are aligned with the right wall. The two different strategies here will be on the next screen transition on what you do. The first one, if you air pump, you will just have to air pump a little bit more to get to the middle. If you actually align yourself with the right mountain wall here, you're actually aligned perfectly with the staircase on the next screen. So optimally, of course, I do air pump to the right. It does speed up Link's movement a little bit. If you do choose to air pump to the right, just make sure you're directly in the center, just hitting that staircase above you. You can nudge, it will lose you a little bit of time. But the Octorok that's in the middle here, depending on where he's at, you can boom him, you can slash him. Of course, booming is going to be a little bit faster. Once you get to the stairs, make sure that you continue to hold up and double pump left and right all the way through. Once you're off the stairs, just continue to hold up and air pump to the right all the way until you get in between the pathway of the top right eagle statue. You can cut that pathway through instead of going up and around it. It is a little bit quicker. Just be aware of the Octorok that's in the middle of that pathway. He can shoot a rock. If you get through that pathway quick enough, Link's shield will just block it, so you don't have to worry most times. Once you're through the two statues, you may just need to hold angle up right for a few steps, and then just go right into holding up and air pumping to the right. Just be aware of the rock that the Octorok is shooting upward to make sure you get by it, or you stall as you're pumping to make sure it passes you first, and then you can pump by it. Once you get above the mountainside here, going toward the Armo statue and the Octorok can actually give you a lot of different RNGs here. He can come straight at you, he can stop in the middle of the statue and then go right again, or he can go up from the middle of the statue, which is probably the worst RNG you can get. But what you want to do, honestly, you can either boom him or slash him if he gets in your way before the Armo statue. But for the Armo statue, you want to make sure that you trigger him as early as possible. So stay low and just keep walking forward until you trigger him. And then you can just do cardinal movement inputs, straight up, straight right. And then you can look down and boom the Armo statue for the faster optimization of movement. After you pass the armor statue, just continue to hold angle down right all the way until you get to the space in the rail where you can jump off the ledge. Once you land from the ledge hop, you can just continue to hold up and air pump to the right, making sure that you're aligned with the stairs. And of course, the stairs are double-sided, so just make sure you hold up and you double pump left and right all the way up them. Once you get to the top of the stairs, just do a cardinal right input and make sure that you stay on the bottom of the rail here. You want to make sure that you stay as low as possible for as long as possible, and the reason being is because there is a blue guard at the top of the next staircase that will spawn if you transition the screen too high. And of course you don't want to do that early, because then you won't be able to pass him as you're going up the stairs. So what you want to do here is continue right at the bottom of the rail, and once you typically get even with that Armo statue, then you want to start to make your way up with an angle right up input and get to the stairs. And then once you get to this set of stairs, of course, continue to hold up and double pump all the way to the top. If you waited to transition that screen, you're going to be able to skip this guard or skip booming him and wasting time. So once you get to the top of the stairs, you should be able to just do a right input and pass the guard. And then as you're moving further to the right, you want to hold diagonal upright and align yourself with the left part of the rail on the next set of stairs. This will give you a much smoother transition as you go up the stairs. And then of course, continue to hold up, double pump left and right as you go up the stairs, and then continue to do the same thing in the next set of stairs. Double pump left and right as you hold up all the way through the stairs and into the entrance. I do show another RNG for this screen, which is actually pretty long. The Eastern Overworld screen is pretty rough, but it's where the Octorok actually stops right around the middle of the Armo statue as you're about to go around him. If this happens, just do the same movement, cardinal movement up and around him, but this time instead of booming him, personally I would just sword poke him, and the reason being is because you don't know where that Octorok is going to go. He could go further right and just be totally out of your way, which is fine, but if he does go back left or stays in the middle of the Armo statue, you'll actually poke the Armo statue to get around him, and you'll actually kill the Octorok that's there too. So the sword poke is a little bit of a safer movement, but it does lose a little bit of time versus booming the Armo statue. The first room of Eastern Palace is pretty simple. Just stay straight. You're able to lift up the pot from the middle of the pathway. And this is actually the first time that we've been able to lift the pot and see the visual cue that we need. And I know a lot of runners tend to have issues when throwing pots where you hit the A button to throw the pot and you're walking with it still and you're like, please just throw the pot. Hello? A good visual cue for this is when you lift the pot, you see sweat come off of Link's head on the left and the right side. Once you see that sweat disperse, that is your cue to throw the pot as early as you can. The next screen, you can actually do a few different strategies. Honestly, you can go with the safe strat, which is just around the enemies here, but there is a faster strat, which I think is right around like 2 to 4 frames at best, but you can just go a little bit left of the switch or air pump to the left, and then you can boom the enemy on the far left there and try to stay as straight as possible and then right air pump into the doorway. And the next strategy I show is probably what most people go for, is just to angle up left movements at the switch there and then just walk slightly around the left enemy there. You can stay relatively close to him, but once you get past him, just hold angle up right and then have a clean door entry. This screen can be a little bit difficult if you're trying to do it optimally, but what you want to do is just leap off the ledge and then hold angle up right to get past the first corner. And more times than not, the first cannonball is on the left side, unfortunately, but the first RNG I show you here is a clear pathway where all the cannonballs are on the right side. You can pump left against the pillars there in the pathway as you hold up to maximize your movement. Once you get around the corner, just make sure it's clean, and then you can just hold left and then air pump up a few times to align yourself with the staircase. After you get off the staircase, just hold angle up right until you're aligned with the top of the wall, and then you want to snap into the doorway. Just cardinal inputs, straight right, straight up, nice clean door entry. All right, the next RNG that's shown here for the cannonball room is pretty typical in a run, where you have to go left and right to avoid the cannonballs. One thing I will note here, when you do that, try to get some pumps in against those pillars if you can. Also, when avoiding the cannonballs by going left and right, you actually don't have to go all the way to the wall. You can cut it a few pixels just so you're not wasting movement. It does take a little bit of practice on not getting hit by the cannonballs if you're not perfectly aligned with the left or the right wall. But optimally, you can just pump left and right to avoid those cannonballs if you have to do that much movement within the room because the RNG is bad. Here, you just want to get through the door and hold up while you air pump to the left all the way to the wall. Once you're aligned with the left part of the wall, just continue to pump left to maximize your movement. Have a nice clean corner around there, and then continue to hold left and pump up until you get to the rail, and then just continue to pump up as much as you can. Once you clear the rail, you can hold angle up left, and then depending on the situation you're in for the 2 pots here, what you want to do is you want to pick up the top pot and hit the switch, align yourself with the left part of the wall, and then snap into the doorway. By any chance in the overworld or an escape you lost a heart, The bottom pot here is what you want to pick up to regain that health. Hit the switch and then just go to the right, up and around that pot that you haven't picked up, and then have yourself a nice clean doorway. This room has quite a few RNGs that you need to make sure that you're aware of. Just hold angle down left on this doorway. Some people like to just hold left until they bump into the rail and then go down from there. You are losing a little bit of time doing that. If you can react quickly to the Stelphos RNG, you shouldn't have any issues just holding angle down left out of the door. Now, the few RNGs that you're going to get out of this room is, of course, the first one is a nice clear pathway. The first Stelphos goes right, and the second Stelphos does not get in your way. So if you do have a clear pathway, you can just continue to hold left and air pump down all the way to the rail, and then clearing that corner, aligning yourself with the left wall, and then having nice clean door movement. The next RNG here, I've seen a lot of runners do this differently. It is losing them quite a bit of frames, but if the first Stelphos doesn't get in your way, but the second one continues to move right, the best movement that you can do is just to go down and around him on the left side. A lot of runners will swipe their sword to make him jump out of the way. You don't have to do that. You can just go down and around him and then start air pumping down as you're holding left and then all the way to the doorway. The next RNG, you have a clear pathway past the first Stelphos, but the second Stelphos goes down. In that instance, it is better to swipe your sword and make him jump out of the way, and then just continue to hold left and down pump against the rail as you make your way to the door. The next RNG shows the first Stelphos actually getting in your way as he moves up. At that point, you definitely want to slash, make him jump out of the way, and if the second Stelphos doesn't get in your way, it's the same as before, clear pathway, air pump down as you're holding left and make your way to the door. The last RNG shown here is probably the toughest or the worst RNG the Stelphos can give you, is where out of that doorway, the first Stelphos goes up, he gets in your way, you have to slash your sword, and the second Stelphos just goes straight right and beelines it to you, which makes it pretty tough because there's not a lot you can do, but what you can do is when you slash that first Stelphos to make him jump out of the way, just continue to hold your sword and then hold left, and either the second Stelphos will jump out of your way immediately, or you'll just poke him and then he'll jump out of your way, which will give you a clear pathway to the bottom to pump down as you hold left and make your way to the doorway. So coming into the Stelphos room, there are a few points that you want to make sure that you don't walk into because it can spawn extra Stelphos. There's a total of 4 in this room, but if you do this room optimally, you only have to kill 2, which of course don't appear until you throw the pot and kill them. I'll put up a visual cue so you can see the direct pathway to go. But what you want to do is when you come through the door, you can air pump once or twice to the left or just move to the left a little bit. That way you're picking up this top right pot on the left side, just getting yourself closer to where you need to be. And then walk that pot to the middle of the pathway where the middle pot is. And then you can either angle down left for movement just to cut it a little bit faster, or you can just walk down a step and then toss the pot to the right. Once that Stelphos is dead, just hold angle up left to get to the next pot on the upper left side. I like to try to lift this pot up on the bottom side of it, on the right side of the pot. And the reason I like to do that is just because, just in case the first Stelphos that you kill drops a magic pot, you can grab that with your boomerang as well, which I believe I show in the second RNG. Once you lift up that pot, just throw it down and kill the Stelphos. If you noticed that the first one didn't drop the magic pot, or you just don't want to go for it, align yourself with the top of the wall and then snap into the doorway. The second RNG that I show you here is just me picking up the magic pot with the boomerang. It does save a few frames in the end after you beat Armos, because after a boss fight it fills your hearts and it fills your magic, and of course if you have a magic pot that just takes less time to fill that up. The next room, just continue to hold up and then air pump to the left against the rail. Once you clear the rail, just make sure you don't nudge on it, have clean stairs on the way down, and then continue to hold right. Once you emerge from the bottom of the walkway that's above you, just hold angle up right and align yourself to have a clean door exit. Continue to hold right through the next doorway. This room has a little bit of controversy, but most top runners now do pick up the safety arrows here. Does save on average about a second of time to not grab the arrows, but honestly a lot of the runners have decided that it is better to grab this arrow pot because a few different reasons. Later on in the run, you're probably going to have to grab an additional arrow pot anyway. And the second reason is because if you don't get the arrow drops from the last few Igor rooms, you're going to waste a lot more time to go back and grab an additional pot in the double Igor room to make sure that you have at least 18 arrows for Armos. But in this room, just continue right, and then once you see the platform where the big chest is on, hold angle down right to align yourself with the top of the platform. Once you clear the platform, hold angle down right a little bit more until you're about lined up with the top half of the upper pot, and then that's where you're going to grab your safety arrows, align yourself with the right wall, and have a clean door entry. Here you want to just hold angle down right out of the doorway, and I like to do this a little bit differently than a lot of the other runners. Is I like to stop holding angle down right when Link is about halfway covered from the platform above you. That way, as I make my way down, I can see where Link is, and that way once I emerge fully from that platform that's above you, it makes it a little bit easier to hold angle down right and align yourself up better with the staircase and not nudge it. In the dark room, just hold angle down right. You don't need to switch your movement to right and then switch your movement back to down. So just hold angle down right all the way through until you are aligned with the right wall, and then transition to down until you're right above the enemy, and then swipe him with your sword to kill him. Some of the other categories, you can actually boom that enemy, but for no major glitches run, you definitely want to kill him with your sword to advance the prize pack or try to get a blue or red rupee out of it. And then once he's dead, hit the switch below and then have a clean door entry. I do show a few different RNGs in this room. The first one, in my opinion, being the faster one, and it's actually easier. Just hold angle up right out of the doorway until you're a little bit above the first pot on the left. And then of course you have to react to the Stealthos RNG depending on where they're going to be. But that should align you nicely just to go straight right and pick up the key pot, and then take a half a step to the right to grab the key, and then make your way back left and pump down as you're holding left, as long as the pathway is clear for you all the way to the door, which is more than likely going to give you the fastest time. The next strategy that I show is kind of a difficult one. You have to have the right Stealthos RNG to do it. In my opinion, it's a few frames slower if you do the optimal strat correctly, but you can toss your boomerang on an angle upright input, and as you throw your boomerang, you can make your way to the pot and then immediately go back left and pump down, as the boomerang will grab the key for you. The last RNG that I show here, it is a clear pathway, but there are times where when you grab the key pot, you're going to notice that there's going to be a Stealthos on the left of you or behind you. In that case, I would probably use this strategy to pick up the pot and then turn left and throw it at the Stealthos to kill him, and then quickly hit a right input and then your boomerang to boom the key, and then go back left and down pump all the way to the door. From here, just hold angle down left as you align yourself with the left part of the wall. That way you don't re-hit the switch below you, which is going to waste quite a bit of time. And as you pass the corner of the wall there, continue to hold straight. Now at this point, the enemy has 3 different places it could be. It could be at the top of the wall, middle, or the bottom. So you're gonna have to make your decision on what you do from this point. If he's at the top, it is faster to down pump underneath him and then up pump as you hold left around him all the way to the doorway. So you can do that to save yourself some time, but if you want to advance the prize pack or you're really in need for a rupee at this point, I would just slash him and wait to see what he drops. If he drops a blue rupee, make your decision. If he drops a red rupee, you can always hit right and boom that rupee real quick. If he's on the bottom, you can just go straight left past him as you up pump on the wall above you. But just note, if that enemy is in the middle, you're either going to have to boom him or slash him. You won't be able to get above or below him. Once you clear the wall, there are a few different movement techniques that you can do here. I don't show one of them, but the first thing that you can do is just hold angle up left and then unlock the door at an angle and then snap into it. The one that I do show you actually saves a few more frames, where you clear the left part of the wall there and you hold up as you pump left to the middle of the doorway and then just enter it cleanly. I call this room the Pump Master room. So what you do here is just hold angle down left through the doorway until you clear the corner of the rail. And then you want to continue to hold left in this first part and pump upward all the way until you hit the middle. The middle is surrounded by 2 rails. So at that point, you want to double pump up and down as you're holding left to speed up Link's movement. And then just continue to do the same thing. Once that rail splits, pump up. Once you get the double rail back, you're going to want to double pump up and down again. And then you can just either hold up once you clear the last part of the rail there and then air pump left to align yourself with the doorway, or just align yourself with the left part of the wall and have a nice clean door entry. The big key deboost room. So you actually utilize iframes here by purposely hitting the first enemy and then being able to pick up the pot and hit the switch from the anti-fairies. This room you actually have to kill all the enemies to make the anti-fairies disperse so you can get to the pot, but since we speed run, we're going to go zoom zoom. So what you want to do is align yourself with the left part of the platform and then go below the enemy and then left right into the space between the pillar and the enemy. And this does take a lot of practice and a few trial and error runs until you get it. But what you want to do is once you pass the enemy, right before you're about to get fully past him or clear that enemy, you want to hold angle up left so you hit the very end of that enemy. He's going to put you into iframe status once you get hit, and that gives you access to grab the pot from the anti-fairies without getting hit first, and that will expose the switch to make the big key chest appear. Now, one thing to note on this, depending on where you stand on the switch under the anti-fairies, they are going to damage boost you in a lot of different directions. So, of course, you do not want to get damage boosts all the way to the left or the right, or even worse, all the way to the bottom, which is below the anti-fairies, then you have to go all the way around them. So one thing that I did notice is if you lift up the pot from the top right corner and you stand on the switch without any other additional movement at the top right of the switch, more times than not, you're going to get damage boosted from the anti-fairies straight up, which will put you in a perfect position to enter the stairs and grab the chest. When you do get on the stairs, just make sure that you continue to hold up and then wiggle left and right to give Link diagonal movement going upstairs, which is going to speed him up. So if you notice when you grab the chest here, the key door at the top is off-centered and it favors the left part of the platform, I believe. So you always want to go left here, even if there is an enemy in your way at the bottom of the stairs. You can either slash him, you can boom him, but just make sure you have a nice clean movement around the stairs corner and then around the platform corner there. And once you clear that corner, you want to continue to hold up and then pump right against that wall. Once you clear the corner of that platform, we're going to do a specific door movement, especially for locked doors, where you hold angle up right, or you hold the diagonal movement toward the locked door. In this case, it's angle up right. So we're going to hold that input until we unlock the door, which is going to be the fastest movement for this. Once we unlock the door, you want to go straight into cardinal movements. For here, it's going to be straight right and then straight up. You don't want to hold any kind of diagonal input as you enter a door, because you're going to drag on the door frame and it's going to slow Link down considerably. As soon as you're at the bottom of the stairs, hold angle up right to align yourself with the bottom of the right block, and then make sure you transition to just straight up. If you try to move this block up while you're still holding an angle input, you're not going to move the block. So once you clear the block, you want to continue to hold up and then air pump to the right. And then once you hit the right wall, just continue to mash right and pump against it all the way until you clear the top corner. Once you clear the corner, hold angle up right until you are aligned with the doorway and enter the next room. You want to exit this doorway with cardinal movements, straight right and straight down, and align yourself with the right side of the pots, which is actually going to put you closer to where you need to go. So after you lift up the first pot and grab the arrows, lift up the second pot and then transition to an angle down right input, and you should still be able to get the arrows as you move downward. Continue to hold angle down right until you are aligned with the left part of the big chest platform. Now, depending on where the Stelphos goes or what RNG he gives you, you may have to alter your movement a little bit, but ultimately you want to align yourself with the left part of that platform. Make sure to have clean corners around the platform And once you get to the left part of the stairs, you're going to want to do the wiggle movement to speed link up, which is left and right as you're moving up the stairs, and then open up the big chest from the left side. After you open the chest and it gives you the text box for getting the bow, you can cancel this text box with LNR, but more importantly, this second here gives you a chance to see the Stelphos RNG on the left side and the right side. This platform is centered with the room, so you can choose to go left or right. Either one of them is going to be just as fast, but this does give you a chance to see what direction is going to be more of a clear pathway for you. If you end up going left, just make sure you have clean corners around the platform, and then as you move up, you want to pump right against the wall. And same thing for the right side. As you're moving up, you're going to want to pump left against that part of the wall. Once you clear the corner, depending on which pathway that you chose to take, align yourself with the bottom of the pot to give yourself a little bit better of a chance for a clean staircase. Also, just a quick note as well too, as you're moving up one of the sides of the big chest platform, if a Stelphos does get in your way, you can just slash your sword and have him jump out of your way. The Gifted with Greenies room, aka Jakey Numbers room, there's a few different strategies that you can do here. The first one is going to be the faster strat. It's called the no slash. What you want to do is you can double pump out of the doorway while holding up, and then just transition to an angle upright movement. And you want to get to the right side of the top right enemy. Once you pass the enemy on the right side, there is a visual cue here to line up perfectly with the Igor on the left, as there is a white pixel that we can show as a visual cue. What you basically want to do is have the top of Link's hat cover that white pixel, and this is actually a great place for a menu buffer because we have to switch to the bow anyway. So with that menu buffer, it does give you a chance to see where you are in relation to the Igor, or if you are on that pixel that you need to be on, or you're covering it. As you switch to the bow, what you want to do is quickly hit left and fire that arrow because you're already going to activate him before you menu buffer. And you may have to stall briefly for the key drop, but what you want to do is just hold left and then you want to air pump up. And if you briefly stall for that key, you should be able to grab it just in time as you're passing it. And continue to hold left as you pump up to align yourself with the middle of the pot. You don't want to try to pick up this pot from the top corner because he will not be able to pick it up. It's goofy. It won't let you. So align yourself with the middle of the pot, grab the magic, and then have a clean key door entry. The next RNG shown here is the one slash. It does lose on average about 15 frames versus the no slash. Shoutouts to Jakey Numbers for some of the visual cues and strategies here, but what you want to do is be as far right as possible to slash this enemy, and hopefully he drops a rupee, because if you're going to do the one slash strategy, it's probably because you have 0 rupees at this point, which is going to be important to do this strat. But you are already going to activate the Igor as you slash this enemy, so the visual cue on the no slash isn't going to work because you can't get as high as you were on the no slash. But it's the same strategy. After you slash the enemy, move up a little bit, you're going to want to menu buffer to the bow and then quickly turn left and fire an arrow to kill him, and then do the same thing as last time, up pump all the way to the middle of the pot and then have a clean door entry. The pots room kind of has some quirky movement to it. You want to make sure that you're picking up pots from the far corners to bring yourself closer to the next pot. So the first one you want to pick up from the upper left side, and then the next one you want to pick up from the lower right side. And the last pot, what you can do is you can actually use they call it a pot sliding technique, where when you pick up the pot, you're holding a angle input. In this case, it'll be an angle down left input. And as you pick up the pot, you kind of slide your movement to the direction that you're holding. And then you just grab both the arrows from those pots, and then you hit the switch and open the door and make sure you enter it cleanly. The Igor switch room, what you want to ultimately do is hold left on the doorway and down pump all the way until you hit the switch. If you notice that your pumping just isn't good enough to get you to that switch, you can just get a few down pumps in and then just hold angle down left until you hit the switch to make sure that you don't get hit by an Igor or you pass the switch by accident. But after you hit the switch, just transition to an angle up left input until you clear the corner of the wall. And then from this point, there's a few different things that you can do. You can either hold left and then up pump a few times to align yourself with the door, or you can hold left and down pump against the wall below you, and then right before you're about to get to the door, align yourself evenly to make sure that you enter the door cleanly. Everyone's favorite cannonball room. You want to hold left on the door and then air pump up all the way to the switch. Like I said in the prior room, if you notice that you're not getting high enough to the switch just by air pumping, you can get a few air pumps in up and then just hold diagonal up left until you hit the switch. You may have to adjust your movements a little bit just depending on the cannonball RNG that you get to make sure that you avoid them. But once you end up hitting the switch, just hold angle down left and enter the door cleanly. Okay, the Zelda Gamer room. This particular room is pretty difficult to optimize. There are a ton of different RNGs. I believe I only show about 7 of the RNGs, but most of those RNGs can be utilized with the same techniques of arrow firing and pot throwing. So even though there is far more than 7, you can just use the same strategies for them all. The few that I do show, the first one here, ultimately what you want to do in most cases is hold left on the doorway and stop on the 3rd tile from the doorway. Or if it's easier for you to remember, it's the 2nd tile from the right of the pots. You always want to stop there and figure out what the Stelphos RNG is. More times than not, the bottom Stelphos is just going to stop, and that's where you want to arrow down and kill him, and then you want to use the pot that's holding the arrows there on the right side to kill the next Stelphos. It's typically almost always 1 arrow, 1 pot to get through this room. There are a few different RNGs where you're going to double arrow. The important thing to remember here is after you kill both the Stelphos, the radius on the red Igor above you to activate him is fairly large, and I'll show a visual cue of it. But what you want to do is after you grab the arrow pot and throw it at the Stelphos wherever he may be and grab the arrows, you just want to go straight up to activate the Igor and then align yourself below him and double arrow to kill him. He does bounce back after you hit him with an arrow, so you can move up a little bit to make the movement a little bit more tighter. But once you get that 2nd arrow in him, he's already in his dying animation. So once he is hit back from that 2nd arrow, just go all the way up to the wall, align yourself with it, slash your sword right, and start to charge your sword to get ready for the next room. Now, some of you may wonder, why are people slashing the sword right to go into this room? It makes no sense. Well, let me tell you, if you end up going into this room by holding your sword straight up, you can actually clink your sword on the way through the door or on the way out of the door in the next room. By clinking your sword like that, it resets Link's spin, so you have to wait for it to charge again. Now, as you're making your way to the 3rd tile from the door there, if you do see the bottom Stelphos stop a little bit earlier, you can go left a little bit more and you know exactly what type of RNG you're dealing with. Just arrow down again, grab that arrow pot, and then throw it at the top Stelphos wherever he may be. The next RNG here is pretty difficult because the top Stelphos goes all the way to the right and then he goes in the upper right corner. You need to be pretty quick with this one, but as you grab the pot and collect the arrows, you can go all the way up to get ready to throw the pot right at the Stelphos as you activate the red Igor, and then just line yourself up quickly right below him and start to arrow. This RNG shown here is pretty much exactly the same RNG if the top Stelphos goes like 2nd tile in and then down. You just use the same down arrow strategy in the pot throw to the right. I just wanted to show this one just to display that he can go much further to the right. This RNG you actually see quite often, but same as before, stop on that tile to kill the bottom Stelphos. And if the top one goes left, which is going to be above that arrow pot, I just align myself up with the bottom of it and then throw it at the Stelphos to collect the arrow. This particular RNG is a little goofy. I like to make sure that I always kill the bottom Stelphos first. And that's why it's important to stop on that tile and figure out where the bottom Stelphos is. But if I stop on that tile and the bottom Stelphos continues to go right, I'll make that my first priority. After going all the way to the right and killing the bottom Stelphos, then you have to figure out where the top Stelphos is going. This particular RNG, he was exactly where I wanted him to be, so I just shot another arrow at him to kill him, but he can stop a little bit higher, or he can continue to go down below the pot, and then of course that second arrow would miss, or you would have to readjust your movement before you fired the arrow. If he does go lower and continues downward, just adjust your strategy, pick up that arrow pot, and then just throw it downward. The last RNG shown, I was headed to the tile that I wanted to be on to figure out where the RNG is, and I saw both of them continue all the way to the right. This one's one of the more slower RNGs, but if this does happen, just use an arrow up and an arrow down to kill both the Stalfos, and then grab the arrow pot, and then make sure you get into the Igor radius as soon as possible and kill him with 2 arrows and align yourself with the top of the door. The double readies room, there is a visual cue that you can use to know where you're at to release the spin to ensure that you kill all the enemies around you. You can be a little bit lower than what I have displayed here, but a safe visual cue is the bottom of Link's shadow is typically lined up directly in the middle of that first diamond tile. After releasing the spin and killing all the surrounding enemies, you want to move up, and the visual cue to activate the double readies is the top of Link's hat. You want to align with the top point of the diamond right below him. I go a little bit higher here, but that's always a nice visual cue to notice. After you activate them, you want to walk down about a tile, and you'll actually be even with the top point of the diamond below you. And that's a safe spot to have enough room to arrow both of these red Igors. Now, the arrow visual cue for both of these Igors are the left and the right points of the diamond, which is in the middle of the pathway, if you can see that. But ultimately, to fire your first arrow on the left red Igor, you only have to go 1 pixel from the left after you release your spin. And then once you hit the first Igor, you can use an angle upright input to get yourself to the right a few pixels and a little bit closer to the next Igor, which will ultimately put you closer to the door, of course. But fire 2 arrows at him, and then use an angle up left input and fire your last arrow at the last remaining Igor, and make sure that you have a clean door entry. Alright, the Armos Knights. Now, most top runners use a strategy which is the top right Armos quick kill, and what you want to do is walk through the right pathway between the last set of Armos, and you want to align yourself with the top middle Armos. And what I like to do is I like to press down on the middle Armos's top right horn, and that will align me where I need to be. Don't worry, you're not going to get hit. They haven't activated yet. So after aligning with the top horn, I like to take a step to the right and then align myself with the top right Armos, his left horn. And once I get to that spot, I like to hold my sword, and basically it's going to slash that Armos, and it's going to bring Link back into more of an angled position where you need to be when this fight starts. Now, this part does take a little bit of timing, but after a few shakes of the Armos Knights, you are able to start to fire your arrows. One thing to note on the arrow firing strategy is you don't always want to mash the arrow button, because you actually can get slower times on the Armos fight, because as you're mashing, you can misfire an arrow because it's too soon or too late, and Link will have to do his bow animation again, which can really slow you down. So what you want to do is have a nice clean rhythm to firing your arrows. It will take some practice, but it can clean up your arrow firing timing and give you much faster times. Once you're ready to start firing your arrows, you want to fire 5 arrows to the right, which is going to put the bottom right Armos 1 arrow away from dying. And then at that point, you want to begin to move left and then transition slightly to an angle up left just to get a little bit above the top left Armos. And then once you're aligned with his horn, you can look down and start to fire the rest of your arrows. Now, at this point, I would say on average, you fire about 10 more arrows down as you're holding down. And that means you got about 3 more arrows left to fire. And at that point, you'll want to transition to an angle down right input to start moving Link down, but more to the right, so you don't miss the rest of the Armos or the rest of the arrows that you're firing. A few things to note here at the final part is you want to make sure that you kill the bottom right Armos last. If you watch some of your Armos fights, sometimes you'll kill the inside Armos and then the bottom right Armos, which is good. And sometimes you're going to kill the bottom right Armos before you kill the inside Armos, which is going to waste a little bit more time. So just make sure that you're being aware of which Armos you're killing last. The second thing to note here is try not to waste an extra arrow into the wall. I know a lot of people say, one for the homies. But arrows at this point going into desert, they can be pretty important, especially what kind of land mode that you have, and then the amount of arrows you have after desert are very important as well. So if you have to count in your head how many times you're hitting the button all the way up to 18, just make sure you don't waste that arrow for the homies right in the wall. The last part of the Armos fight, you're going to get the green pendant. Now for pendant catches, you want to make sure that you're catching them as low as possible. And the reason for that is you're actually going to catch the pendant faster the lower that link is. And the visual cue to grab the green pendant is line up the bottom of Link's shadow right at the tip of the first full diamond that's above the doorway. And that is the lowest spot to catch the green pendant.